see Noon's email, Mark?
All right.
I think there was no, Sky did.
Yes.
Nothing? Nothing. Sky gave a copy of the committee minutes, if there should be any questions. So, and Noonan, I seen that last email.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 18th committee meeting of the St. Joseph County Council. Just real quick, I want to remind everybody, we are in a committee meeting, even though we're out here in this setting, so there will be no public comment this evening. All right? We'll start with Budget Administration. Councilman Tanner.
Thank you. Bill number 11-25A, appropriation of $1 million, Department 0002, physical assets.
Anybody here on it?
Yeah, Bree.
Good evening, Council. Bree Roberts, offices on the 7th floor of this building, Director of Physical Assets. Before you today is this appropriation of $1 million into the Woodland Fire account. This money will go towards the rebuild, and this money comes from the insurance check that we received from damages paid back.
Does anybody have questions for Bree?
I have just one quick question. Bree, do you know when the garage will be finished? I know they're starting on it now.
Yeah, so they have actually been working on it for a number of months now. This actually falls within an IPG project that's assigned to Yoder Construction. I know that they are in the process. I don't have a completion date for you, but I can certainly talk to IPG and get that to you.
Thank you.
Councilman Tanner.
Yes, Mr. Schetzel.
Bree, I have a quick question. The amounts, the two amounts you're asking for add up to approximately $995,000 and just a few more dollars, but you're asking for $1 million. Can you explain why the difference?
Yep, so we kind of went back and forth. I tried to include some of that correspondence just so you could understand kind of our thought process. We decided on just the round million in the case that there should be any incidentals that would come up. I don't expect it to hit that number. I think the exact numbers that you see within the correspondence is where we will hit. But we just landed on the million as far as appropriation in case, so that if we were to go incrementally over, that we wouldn't have to kind of inch back to this council.
Okay, and then any increment left over would be held for future use on the garage, is that correct?
My understanding is that it would sit in this account until the end of the year, in which it would roll back into
Okay.
reserves.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Any other questions for Bree? Bree, I do have a question. I see that it's itemized in the AIA document, but this is a pretty large change order, especially comparative to the overall contract.
Yep.
Is there a general understanding as to why pricing increased by that degree?
So my understanding is that change order was for Woodland Fire. Again, this is an IPG project, so I am speaking on behalf of Sky here, which I don't know. Is he on? So Sky might be able to assist with that one better than I would. I don't know if you want to jump in, Sky.
Yeah, Sky Matters, Department of Infrastructure Planning and Growth. Office is on the 7th and 11th floor of the County City Building. Yeah, what that number is for, what I don't have it in front of me, what was the itemized,
So the change order was in the amount of $561,925.
and I believe that was for the fire suppression, if I recall.
Yep, so there's fire damage repairs, the erection of the hoop structure, which was essentially a temporary garage so that we could house some of the equipment and stuff out there. Labor and material, and the cleaning of the steel due to the soot and debris.
Yeah, the cost that they gave us was what it would take to repair the fire damaged area. And then also there were some items that were also added because since the garage was being rebuilt after an insurance claim, they paid to bring certain items up to code, which included fire suppression, I believe. And that was a pretty salty number because that included having to put in a well for fire suppression.
Okay,
I don't
so
know if that answers the question.
for the most part, Sky or Bree, so it sounds like because insurance was involved in this, the systems already existed, but because they had to be brought back up to code, it required effectively a complete reinstall of a new modern system.
So actually,
Well, I mean,
there
go ahead, Rick.
wasn't existing fire suppression before, given the fire. We decided that was a good idea. And then there were also certain code upgrades that were required. So one of them being like a concrete floor versus the dirt floor that was there before because we are holding heavy machinery. So that was a code upgrade that had to be done. Oddly enough, there was also some landscaping that had to be done per code. And so it was things like that.
Yeah, and it also included, I mean, putting up new steel for the building, replacing some electrical that, was damaged in the fire and whatnot.
So would it be fair to say that our Yoder's base bid was to simply match existing conditions and these change orders reflect all of those needs to address code changes?
I would agree. Yep. Instead of basically awarding this to a different contractor, my understanding was because this was an existing project that Yoder had underway for the existing garage renovations, and because we had been afforded a certain price reduction for awarding those garages as renovated in a package, it made more sense to do this way with Yoder in a change order versus go with another contractor and back out of the piece with Yoder at this garage.
Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions for Bree or Sky?
Motion to send it favorably.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion moves forward with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
Bill number 11-25B, appropriation of $2,000, Department 0041, Solid Waste Management.
Good evening. Benjamin Carson with Solid Waste Management District of St. Joseph County. We are in the process of receiving a $2,000 grant from the Indiana Department of Environmental Management's Community Recycling Grant Program that we will be using for supplies for our styrofoam recycling program. I'm just here asking permission to proceed with the grant process.
Any questions for the Solid Waste Department?
Mr. Tan.
Mr. Catan's right.
Mr. Carson, so is that a recycling program run out of your facility, or will it be something that's coming on the recycling program, like at curbside?
No, it is through our Household Hazardous Waste Center at 828 Kerr Street.
Okay. So bring your styrofoam if you guys get this program up and going.
We've been running it for 1 year now as a test, and it's been quite successful. So we hope to improve and continue on, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
Motion to send it favorably.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill number 11-25B moves forward with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill number 11-25C, transfer of $10,765, Department 0002, Commissioners/HR.
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and speak on behalf of the commissioners and HR on this one. This is a budget transfer, an out-of-line transfer to cover the cost of a settlement paid to a former employee as part of the contract that was approved by the BOC. No change to the overall fund in the budget.
Any questions for, I guess, Abby? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion sent favorably.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Bill number 11-25C moves forward with a favorable recommendation. Bill number 11-25D, transfer of $6,444, Department 0002, Auditor.
This is a budget transfer for, to cover printing costs that used to be kind of buried in the IT budget. You know, they're running lean and mean, and it's more appropriate that it be paid out of our budget anyway. So we have some extra and other contractual services which we're transferring to printer costs. It's to cover online, cover a PO for printing.
Are there any questions for John? John, I have a quick question for you. The printing costs that your department sees, is that largely in interaction with the public and printing costs with them, or is it internal distribution of paperwork?
It's both. I mean, we do, our property tax side deals more with the public, and there is some regarding that. It's also, we do a lot of reporting in our office, so there is some involved in that. So it's kind of a combination of both.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other questions, is there a motion?
Motion sent favorably.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Bill number 11-25D moves forward with a favorable recommendation. Bill number 11-25E, appropriation of $755.98 / $4,453, Department 0001. Clerk.
Hi, Amy Rolfus. I am the clerk of the Circuit Court, and I have my office in the basement of Courthouse 1. This is a 10% match. If you remember, we got this Help America Vote college poll worker program, and what we call Work the Vote. It is designed to encourage college workers to become vote center workers. And there's a 10% match that's required by us in order to get the grant. We got the grant, and this is just for the 10% of the match on that grant.
Any questions for Ms. Rolfus?
I have one question.
Yes, Mr. Schultz.
I'm just curious about the program to get college students to come out and work as poll workers. Is that a relatively new program, or?
Well, this Work the Vote program, well, what we call Work the Vote, Help America Vote College Poll Worker Grant, is through the United States Elections Assistance Commission, so it's a federal office. And they had done a grant proposal back in, I think, 2010, and that is the intent, understanding that our election workforce is aging out, as we know here in St. Joseph County. But God bless them, it's wonderful. But to provide an opportunity for us as grantors or grantees to think outside the box in order to engage with the younger folks that we have here. We were much more successful with this grant. It's still operating. It goes until the end of this year. But because of the presidential was the heavy workload, that was the heavy lift of it. We had a tremendous response from high schoolers. So we advertised Work the Vote. We were at events. And we got about 30 college students, but we had 37 high school students that worked the election. So that will be a continuing focus for us throughout this whole year, is more voter information, helping people to understand what it means to be an election worker. So we learned a tremendous amount through that presidential election for this particular grant, which, even though the grant will expire at the end of this year, we will continue with the Work the Vote program. Hopefully it will be a well-branded kind of thing, and people will see it and say, oh, maybe I would like to be an election worker. So even though we have a downtime now, or a hiatus in 2025, no particular election, but we really are going to continue using the program, so.
Excellent. Excellent, thank you.
Mr. Catanzari?
So, Ms. Rolfes, just to be clear, so is this for the 2024 election? These dollars we're appropriating?
Yes. That
Okay.
was the match that we then ended up having to do. The
Okay.
grant is, as I said, it's starting to sunset at the end of this year, which is appropriate because no one's having elections in 2025, so, yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions from the council? Yes. Mr.
Not
Rutt.
being on the committee, can I ask
You may.
a question? Ms. Rolfus, the public schools, are they all closed down on Election Day? Do they all get the day off? Do you know?
I'm not sure that every single one of them does. A lot of them say they have e-learning, for sure.
Okay.
So we don't use all of the public schools. We have 42 vote center sites, and they're not all schools. Although we do enjoy using schools because they have to. They have to because it's a public building. But I can't answer that question about all schools.
So the students, do they get a grade at the end of the day, or?
Our high school students?
Yeah.
The high school students all get a certificate from the Secretary of State himself. They get a little lapel pin as well. They're not so jazzed about that. But then they do have a certificate from us as well, to their school administrator or whatever. We have to get permission from the school and from the parent. So they do know that they're not skipping school, they're actually working the election.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion to send it favorably.
Second.
Seeing a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill number 11-25E moves forward with a favorable recommendation. Bill number 11-25F, appropriation of $2,430. Again, clerk.
Clerk, Amy Rolfus, Clerk of the Circuit Court, office in the basement of Courthouse 1. This is actually good news for us and a learning experience. This money was used in preparation for the presidential audit, the post-election audit that we had done. We anticipated needing a piece of furniture to help with the audit, a mail sorter it was. So we went ahead and we purchased it. And it cost $2,430. But what we realized as we got closer and closer and were in more communications with the auditing firm itself, they decided, no, we didn't need to sort the way that we thought we were going to have to sort. They believed, they at first told us we had to sort Election Day ballots by precinct, and we have over 200 precincts, and that would have been just a task that would have been way too crazy. So since we are a vote center county, the VSTOP, they're the ones that did the audit, they said, we need to go to a different model for vote center counties. So they allowed us to sort the ballots just by vote center alone. So we did not need these two giant pieces of mail sorters. So this is a refund that we returned that article of furniture, and they then gave us a check. We were very happy we could return it. But now we know to ask for a credit and not for a refund. So that's what this is. This is, from what I understand, the money goes back into the general fund, and then we have to ask for it. Yes, Steve, you're shaking your head. So next time we'll ask for a credit, not a refund. But it's good news that we didn't need to use that piece of equipment, and we also got our money back, so.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Rolfs? No? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to send it favorably.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Bill number 11-25F moves forward with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bill number 12-25, combined with Bill number 11-25G, salary amendment, Department 027 clerk, transfer of $6,108 slash $171.12. Again, clerk.
Brian, actually, Amy and I spoke, and I'm going to go ahead and present this for you.
Thank you.
Abby's passing around a revised version. We've coordinated with the clerk, and we've got a typo-free version, I hope.
Okay.
There's actually two items going on here. The first item is to increase the pay for the clerk by the 4%. When we did the budget, I actually rounded down to the 104, but if you take her salary plus the stipend for the election, it comes out to 104, 144. So there's a small amount of 144 that we're correcting with the top portion of this budget transfer.
I see.
The second part of the budget transfer is there was a disconnect between our two offices as far as paying the stipend that was in effect budgeted for 2024, but it was never paid. It was discovered actually when, the W-2s go out, and so it's not a pay increase by any stretch, just a 2024 stipend. It will be paid in 2025. So that's $5,138 plus the requisite FICA and PERF. So those are the two items to get the clerk's salary squared away.
Thank you. Any questions for John?
Excuse me, I have a question. John, so this 5,344, is that just divided by 26 pay periods? So it's kind of when she gets paid, or do you get it like at one check at the end of the year?
The 5,000? I think it's paid quarterly, I believe.
Oh, quarterly.
Yeah, I think when they have election meetings, it's paid after that. So it was just, it should have been paid during the year, but it wasn't,
So
so.
that's just on, that runs through salary then?
It does, because
Okay.
as an employee,
Right.
if you have ancillary jobs, it runs through salary.
Okay,
You can't really be an employee and a contractor at the same time.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Seeing none, is there,
I do.
oh,
So
Mr.
we're doing
Stanzberg.
a one-time catch-up, is that what we're doing for 20?
Yeah, it's just to pay the 2024 amount that should have been paid. That's really what it is.
Okay, and then going forward,
Going forward, I think we've learned our lesson. We'll make sure to pay that within the budget year that it's been appropriated for.
and so when I'm looking at the budget book, it says 2025 salary, $104,000, less 5344 for election board. Is that correct in the budget book or not?
No, it's not. It should be 104, 144. That's what the top part,
104, 144?
104, 144. And then minus, what is it saying there? 6,000, or,
5344.
yeah, that's the correct amount, right?
Okay.
Mr. Fig.
Just one more question, John, I was thinking, so since we're paying last year and this year, she get it like at the quarter, she'll get like both at a quarter, you're gonna just pay her last year right now?
I think we'd probably pay it right after it's been approved by the commissioners. After you guys approve it and the commissioners approve it.
All right, thanks.
That'd be the appropriate thing to do, I think. We may space it out because you don't want to, if somebody gets like it all at one time, we might space it into a couple different payments so that it's not overly tax withheld,
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for John? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Motion to send it forward favorably.
Second.
Okay, having a motion and a second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill number 12-25 combined with Bill number 11-25G moves forward with a favorable recommendation. And that is all for me, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman Tanner. Councilwoman Shabazz.
Bill number 11-25H, appropriation $772,800, Department 002 IPG.
Good evening, Bill Shalio, Economic Development Director. What we're asking for you to do tonight is create an account where we can put grant proceeds, so we can receive the grant proceeds, then pay out the grant proceeds. It's a way that the auditor's office works as far as federal grants. This is a federal grant related to the Chrissy grant that was obtained by the county through the Redevelopment Commission late last year to study the rail extension of the Elkhart and Western Railroad from where it ends at Current Road, potentially up to Cleveland Road. Again, just a study. The total amount of the grant was $772,800. It's a 75-25 grant, so the county, through the Redevelopment Commission, would be in for half of 25%, or 100,000 roughly. Elkhart and Western would be in for 100,000 roughly, and then the federal government would pay the rest of the grant. We've received notification that one Federal Railway Administration staffs up. We will get paperwork to move forward with this grant. Right now, they are understaffed. So at some point soon, we anticipate being able to move forward with this grant, but that's the purpose of the request today. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Shalio. So I was, looks like there's just a accounting page right here with a brief justification and then an attachment that includes a number of different projects. So this would be the Indiana one. What's the primary purpose of this project? So you mentioned it's just a study, but a study for a project.
Correct, yes.
What's
So-
the primary purpose?
Yeah, so right now, the Elkhart and Western Railroad operates between Current Road and the Robert Young Yard at Elkhart. So the rail line goes from Current, is as far this western extent, all the way into and connects to the Norfolk Southern line. This would be a study to extend the rail line up to the Canadian National Tracks. So it would follow along Capitol Avenue up to connect south of Cleveland Road to the Canadian National Tracks, so that we would have one train line, a short line train that could connect between two Class I railroads. This opens up huge opportunities for economic development and movement of goods and services. We don't know that it's possible. There's some obstacles we got to work around, so that's why we're doing the study. I think you referenced the grants that were awarded. Our grant is the top page on page 12. But again, this is just a study at this time to see if it's even practical and feasible.
Okay. So extending the railroad, it seems kind of significant. And I mean, this is Osceola, right? So there's railroads going everywhere already. Was there any alternatives explored when considering moving forward with requesting this grant that you know of?
Yeah, so we actually looked at, so the Elkhart and Western Railroad has operated in St. Joseph County and Elkhart County for over 100 years. Originally, the line, for those that are old enough that remember back when Uniroyal was downtown, this actually was the line that serviced the coal yard that was adjacent to the power plant downtown Mishawaka. It ran through Central Park, across the trestle, back along the river up, and then ultimately connected in to where it ends right now at Current Road. The train was discontinued, or the track was discontinued at Current when Capitol Avenue was built 20-plus years ago. And so there really aren't a lot of alternatives to connect to Canadian National, except to follow up along the east side of Capitol up to where the tracks are. We know we don't want to put a rail crossing in at Capitol Avenue to get to the Canadian National Tracks. There'd be a lot of property acquisition that would happen in that corridor. This is really the best alternative if this is an opportunity. And again, that's why we're doing the study, to see if it's an opportunity that could work.
Okay, so years ago, the Elkhart Western line, did it connect to the Canadian line
It actually
in
never,
Mishawaka?
it's actually never connected to the Canadian National Line. It actually serviced, again, into downtown Mishawaka. So there's never been a connect between those two rail services. It's always connected into the Norfolk Southern Line.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to send favorably?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those opposed, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Bill number 1125H moves forward with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Councilwoman Shabazz. Councilman Tanner, back to you.
Sure. Bill number 59-24, Taxpayer Protection and Transparency Bill, petitioners Amy Drake and Mark Root.
The petitioner is going to hold this bill, please.
Petitioner has requested to hold the bill in committee. Mr. President, all for me.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shabazz, back to you.
Bill number 1-25, establishing rules and regulations regarding off-road vehicles. Petitioner Thomas.
Thank you. We had talked about this in the last committee, and we tabled it, I know, and we had some questions for the engineer and the sheriff's office. So I've talked to both of those folks. I think you guys saw the email probably from Steve Noonan. I don't think he has a problem with it. I've talked to Mr. Sky Metters. He does not have any issues with it. If you have any questions, Sky is here. I know Steve's out of town. He couldn't be online either, I don't think. But I've talked to Mr. Zalis too, and we've also kind of tweaked it a little bit. I don't think a whole lot is different from last time. So if anybody has any questions, I can entertain them. We also have Jake here from the Off-Road ATV Association, so if you have any questions for them or his other officers on the board, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Do we have any questions?
I have a question. Maybe for Mr. Zalis. When you tweaked the bill, I believe the original had some provision for the commissioners to designate certain roads off limits. Is that still in the bill?
That is, they have the ability to do that. I was looking at what's in our packet. I need the microphone.
Oh, sure.
I was looking what's in our packet. I don't know if it's the final version of what I tweaked or
I'm
what
not
was
sure
presented
either.
last time. Because it does look slightly different. I believe what was in, at least in my packet, is the one that was presented last time. The specific changes that were made to this particular bill to address your concerns. The first concern was whether or not we had appropriate definitions of what constituted an off-road vehicle, a snowmobile, or a restricted vehicle. In the revised version, we've incorporated the state statute to define snowmobiles and off-road vehicles according to statute. We've then taken those two definitions and merged them into what we would call a restricted vehicle, which speaks in terms of both of those vehicles. So that was the first thing that we did to address the council's concern on the definitions. With regard to the penalties for operation of the vehicle on the roadway, we took the traffic code as it applies to any other motor vehicle on the roadway, and we applied it to that new definition of restricted vehicle. To the extent that we didn't capture anything under the traffic code, we've applied the county ordinance so that an ordinance violation can be applied up to $500. So I think we have a comprehensive set of penalties that incorporates the state penalties to the extent that there's some gap in that. There's still the ability for enforcement with the county ordinances. The vehicles themselves, we have them on the right-hand side of the road in uniform fashion. There are occasional vehicles on the roadway, so at least it gives motorists an indication that we have a new or a vehicle on the road that they're not used to seeing. They're not going to be in the incorporated areas of St. Joseph County. They won't be coming to council meetings on snowmobiles. They'll be in the unincorporated areas. I think those were the primary concerns, and then when I spoke with Councilman Thomas right before the meeting, he was indicating that the sheriff's office liked the ability that they could restrict certain roads, like Cleveland Road, if they had a heavy traffic pattern or there was a safety concern. So I think that we've addressed all of those issues, and we've taken what we had at the last meeting and we condensed it down to 3 very easy-to-read pages as to what the new rules are.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Well, I'd just like to make a comment that I like the sound of that flexibility, where some roads that are sparsely used, the neighborhood might, appreciate having off-road accessibility, whereas some busy neighborhoods, and I think mentioned Cleveland Road up there in Clay Township, I mean, that's extremely busy traffic, where neighborhoods in the traffic may not like, having that be accessible for off-roading. And so somebody in the county, having a concerning situation, if they get stuck behind a vehicle that's not your traditional car, they could notify the county, and then, maybe have that road set aside as not accessible for that. And then whether that's done through the sheriff or just only through the commissioners, I think that's a very reasonable compromise.
And with regard to the condensed nature of the ordinance itself, we did highlight the specific safety concerns that, you would have with that type of motorist on the roadway so that people who were reading the ordinance would be aware, helmet, passenger requirements, lights on the vehicle. So all of those are highlighted so that it's, apparent to a county resident or someone from outside the county what the rules are and how they apply.
Yeah.
Mr. Shabazz, I'm on your committee. Do you mind me asking a question? Mr. Zalis?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Zalis, in section 7504, which is proof of financial responsibility, I'm operating off the January 8th version of the bill.
Right.
It defines what the requirements are for someone to have financial responsibility. Are those typical limits you'd see on an off-road vehicle, do you think? The $25,000 for bodily injury or death?
We've
$50,000
incorporated the state limits since we are treating them as a regular, since we're giving them the privilege of driving on a roadway, we're treating them as a vehicle on the roadway like we would everyone else. And 2550 limits are the state minimum in the state of
minimums?
Indiana.
Okay, just wanted to make sure on that. And do you think, I mean, God forbid something bad would happen, somebody would get injured, or worse yet, die. By having this enabling ordinance, do we make ourselves any more open to liability in terms of the county, or are we indemnified by passage of this in terms of, or we're not any more open to liability than we normally would be, I guess?
Being one of the last counties to pass this type of ordinance in the state of Indiana, these things are pretty uniform in the state. I don't see you opening yourself up to liability in any fashion in passing the ordinance itself. And we have protections in the event of an accident in that we do have the state minimums, and oftentimes people do carry more than that on their motor vehicles, their policies of insurance.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ms. Shabazz.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions?
I've got one more, and just, you kind of reminded me of something. I've had several constituents reach out to me because Granger is, you know, subdivision heavy, and say they're concerned about these kind of vehicles on the road. If we had an accident and the commissioners / sheriff decided to shut that road down for these vehicles, would someone be able to sue the county to try to reopen that road up, or would we be in danger of a suit in that situation?
I don't believe that you would be, because they would be exercising a discretionary function, and safety being the concern that they would be speaking to. So
Okay.
I don't see you opening yourself up to
Okay.
legal responsibility under that set of circumstances.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I guess I'd like to add on to that question. So if there's a process that's done through the commissioners to close off a section of road, then it's, then a process to undo that, does it make sense that somebody could then undo that soon after, within, you know, a short time, after a couple of years? Seems like once that process is done, it's really kind of added to the intent of this, this new ordinance.
I think that that would be entirely circumstantial to the circumstances that necessitated the closing of the roadway, whether it was a safety issue because of development, or whether it was a safety issue maybe based upon the configuration of the roadway and the ability to observe and perceive. So I don't know if I can properly address your concern without additional circumstances that may cause for the closure of a roadway.
I guess my question would just be, if a roadway was determined to be unsafe for off-road vehicles, like, that designation should then carry forward indefinitely, or at least for a long period of time, that this council would be approving the commissioners the authority to add on to that as needed. Does that make sense?
Well, they're going to have to follow the same rules as automobiles, so, I mean, they're pretty much, am I right on that, Clint? I mean, they're following basically the same rules as cars.
Correct. We're treating them as motor vehicles.
Right.
We're just putting a little different restriction on them, and that we're putting them off to the right-hand side of the road and requiring them to be in single file when they're driving on the roadway in a group.
Yeah, I think we're all saying the same thing, so, yeah, thank you.
Councilman Tanner, did you have a question?
I did. Actually, it's more of a request, Ms. Shabazz. Given that you don't believe that the information in our packet was correct, I appreciate your explanation. Could we, rather than beating around the bush, just ask you to please send that latest version to
Sure.
the entire council? And as long as we've got that guarantee, I plan to approve or move forward favorably. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? All right, seeing no more questions, do I have a motion?
Motion to send favorably?
Second.
All right. All those opposed, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, bill number 1-25 moves forward with a favorable.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Shabazz. Rules Committee, I don't think we had anything at this point. Okay, thank you. Presentations, do we have any presentations today? I don't believe so. Monthly discussion on county budget. Anyone have anything they need to discuss? All right, any other business we'd like to discuss or unfinished business? All right,
On the budgetary side.
yes,
I
go
mean, I
ahead.
know we didn't, just, John, I know Senate Bill 1 got passed, and the governor has,
It passed out of the Senate, it still has to.
right, passed out of the Senate.
Yeah.
But the governor has said he will not entertain any version of that bill. He will veto it if it's in any form other than what he originally asked for. And I know that it's already been amended. Have you heard anything from your counterparts statewide?
I haven't heard anything other than and I don't know if I passed it around, but the latest, the version that came out of the Finance Committee, the State Finance Committee. That's the only other information I had.
And what was the hit we would receive on that, if that did get passed as originally proposed?
It was the finance one or the original one? The original
Yeah, the
proposal?
original.
I think it was 10.5 million the first year, maybe 15, 25 million, something like that.
Okay.
Is that 10.5 million less than we received last year, or is that 10.5 million out of additional funds? What is that?
I think it's less, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
10.5 million less than you would get if they didn't change the law.
Okay, I see.
Okay, so it includes the trending and the state COLA, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's still a pretty big amount.
Thank you.
Any other items you wish to discuss? All right, seeing none. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.